Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we bring you one of the most intense and surprising political moments of recent times. A debate that began as a typical exchange on faith and politics turned into a stunning display of biblical knowledge, leaving everyone shocked. Yes, we are talking about the fiery confrontation between former Governor Mike Huckabee and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. This was supposed to be just another televised discussion about values and politics, but it quickly escalated into something extraordinary. Huckabee, known for his religious background and confidence on biblical matters, tried to challenge Crockett's faith, but what happened next left him, and the entire audience, completely stunned. The stage is set. Picture the scene. A grand studio lit brightly with cameras zooming in from every angle. The audience is packed, sitting in eager anticipation. On one side of the table sits Mike Huckabee, former governor, veteran politician, and a man who has built his career around presenting himself as a guardian of Christian values. On the other side sits Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, young, bold, and fiery. She is not known to back down from challenges, and her sharp, no-nonsense style has often left her opponents rattled. The moderator opens the discussion with a question that already carried weight. Should faith play a direct role in politics, and if so, how? The room becomes tense. Both guests lean forward, and then Huckabee makes his move. Huckabee's challenge. With a calm but pointed smile, Huckabee looks directly at Crockett and asks, "Congresswoman, may I ask you something? Do you actually understand the teachings of the Bible? Or is this just a performance, a political act to appeal to certain voters?" The words strike like thunder. The audience shifts uncomfortably. Some lean forward in suspense. Others whisper under their breath. It is clear to everyone that Huckabee is challenging not only her knowledge, but her authenticity. For a moment, the cameras zoom in on Jasmine Crockett's face. Would she hesitate? Would she dodge the question? No. Instead, she straightens her posture, takes a sip of water, and begins to speak with steady confidence. Crockett's first response. "Governor Huckabee," she says calmly, "faith is not about using Scripture as a weapon. Faith is not a performance. It is reflected in how we live and how we treat others. The Bible makes this clear over and over again." She pauses, then quotes from the book of Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. "What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." The audience reacts audibly. Heads nod. Some clap lightly. The studio atmosphere begins to shift. Crockett continues, "These are the principles I try to live by in my work. Justice, mercy, and humility. That is not a show. That is faith in action." The camera cuts to Huckabee, who forces a smile but is clearly caught off guard. Still, he is not ready to give up. Huckabee's second attempt. "Well, Congresswoman," Huckabee replies, leaning back in his chair, "if that is true, then how do you explain the fact that many of your political positions contradict traditional Christian values? Don't you think that undermines your claim of living by faith?" The audience holds its breath. It feels like Huckabee may have regained control of the exchange. But Crockett doesn't flinch. Crockett's counterattack. She leans forward, her tone sharper now. "Let me remind you, Governor, of the greatest commandment Jesus himself gave us. Love your neighbor as yourself. If a policy feeds the hungry, shelters the homeless, and protects the vulnerable, then that policy is rooted in biblical truth." She cites Matthew 25:35-36. "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in." Her voice rises as she delivers the point. Faith is not about clinging to tradition for tradition's sake. Faith is about living out the words of Christ through justice, compassion, and service. The audience erupts in applause. Some people stand. The moderator raises his eyebrows, impressed. Huckabee begins shifting in his chair, his earlier confidence slipping away. The turning point. This is the moment when the tables turn completely. Huckabee, the seasoned debater, suddenly has no words. He tries to open his mouth, but nothing comes out. The camera zooms in on his face, his smile frozen, his eyes darting. Meanwhile, Crockett sits composed, her hands folded, her expression calm but resolute. The studio audience bursts into louder applause. Viewers at home can feel it. Something unusual has just happened. A politician famous for religious rhetoric has been silenced by biblical arguments even stronger than his own. Social media eruption. Within minutes, clips of the exchange flooded Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Hashtags like Faith Debate and Jasmine Owned trended nationwide. One user tweeted, "This wasn't a debate. This was a sermon, and Jasmine Crockett was the preacher." Another wrote, "Huckabee thought he was testing her faith. Instead, he exposed his own lack of depth." On YouTube, the video garnered millions of views in a matter of hours. Comment sections filled with heated arguments, some praising Crockett's boldness, others defending Huckabee. But one thing was clear. People could not stop talking about what they had witnessed. Political and cultural impact. Anchors across networks began analyzing the exchange. Was this just a debate moment, or was it something larger? For many, it raised a deeper question. What does it really mean to live by faith in politics? Commentators argued that Huckabee had relied on the assumption that quoting Christian values was enough. But Crockett flipped the script. She reframed faith not as rigid tradition, but as compassion, justice, and humility. Some religious leaders even weighed in. One pastor wrote, "Regardless of your political views, Congresswoman Crockett reminded us of a truth we often forget. Faith is not slogans, it's service." Now, dear viewers, let us pause and reflect. What did this moment really reveal? It showed us that faith, when weaponized for political gain, can backfire. Huckabee entered the debate confident that he could undermine Crockett's credibility by questioning her understanding of Scripture. But instead, Crockett's depth of knowledge and her ability to connect biblical principles to modern policies left him and everyone else speechless. It also showed us that voters are hungry for authenticity. They don't just want leaders who can quote verses. They want leaders who can live them. And perhaps the most powerful message of the night was this: faith is not proven by how loudly you proclaim it, but by how faithfully you practice it. The dramatic conclusion. As the program ended, the moderator summed it up perfectly. "Tonight we have seen that the true test of faith is not in the words you use, but in the life you live." Jasmine Crockett closed with one final remark. "Faith compels us to lift others up, not tear them down. It demands compassion, not condemnation. That is what I believe, and that is the faith I strive to live by." With that, the debate ended. But the echoes of this confrontation are still being heard across the country. It has become a moment people will point to when discussing the intersection of faith and politics.